सिस्टम तेणु सिस्टम कहले गोटे मेकानिजम जोटा कि कौन गोटे जिनिस एनवायरनमेंट रु ग्रहण करिवो ताकू तारि भितर ताकू प्रोसेसिंग करिवो एवं तापर तार ताकू कन्वर्ट करिकी ताकू आउटपुट आकार रे छाडिवो एटा गोटे सिंपलिस्टिक प्रोसेस सेही लाइट रे बा सेही आधार रे आमे बुझिबा जे पॉलिसी प्रोसेस टा भी किमिति सेही भलिया गोटे सिस्टमिक मॉडल देकी जाउची दैट मीन्स where the policy is framed, how that policy is conditioned or channelized or churned, and then how that policy ultimately bears some fruit. How they ultimately bear some fruit. Actually, our policy ର ଉଦ୍ଦେଶ୍ୟ ହେଉଛି କ'ଣ ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ଡିଫେନ୍ସ ପଲିସି ଡିଫେନ୍ସ ପଲିସିର ultimate objective ହେଉଛି how to make the country self reliant capable enough to deal with the enemies. ତେଣୁ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମର ଦରକାର different defense acquisitions डिफेन्स पॉलिसी सेमती आम कौचे एडुकेशन पॉलिसी एग्रीकल्चरल पॉलिसी एग्रीकल्चरल सेल्फ सफिशिएंसी आमर दरकार एग्रीकल्चरल पॉलिसी तेणु पॉलिसीटा खाली तो पेन एंड पेपर रे हेगला हेबनी ताकू पुणी ठीक भाव में आमको कार्यकारी करने को पड़ो केमिति पॉलिसीटा कार्यकारी हम कार्यकारी होला पर प्रकृत रे पॉलिसी रु फलटा मिलुची कि नहीं आमे कहीदेले जे कमिंग इयर रे आमको एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोडक्शन आउरी 10 मिलियन टन बढ़ाइबा को पड़ो खाली तो गोटे पॉलिसी स्टेटमेंट हेगला एटा हेगला पॉलिसी स्टेटमेंट किंतु तापय तो कार्य दरकार तापय एक्चुअल एक्टिविटीज आर आल्सो नीडेड फ्रॉम द फील्ड एंड फॉर दैट पर्पस वी विल हैव टू एंगेज द डिफरेंट वी कैन से एग्रीकल्चरल साइंटिस्ट्स then your fertilizer industries, the farmers, the market. So all these things they have to be involved. Then only when ultimately we shall see after the assessment, yes, this has been possible, then we can say policy has been successful. It is not always true that policy is 100% successful. In no case can we say that a policy can be 100% successful. ତେଣୁ ଯୋଉଠି ବି ଫେଲିଓର ରହୁଛି ତାର ବି ଷ୍ଟକ୍ ଟେକିଂ ଦରକାର ତେଣୁ ଫେଲିଓର କାହିଁକି ହେଲା କାହିଁକି ଗୋଲଟା 100% ନ ହେଇକି 90% ରହିଗଲା କି 80%ରେ ରହିଗଲା କି 70%ରେ ରହିଗଲା କ'ଣ କରିଥିଲେ ବା କ'ଣଟା ଭୁଲ ରହିଲା ଯେ ଯୋଉଥିପାଇଁ କି ଏଭଳି ସର୍ଟକମିଂଟା ଆସିଲା ବା ସର୍ଟେଜଟା ଆସିଲା ଏଇସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡ଼ାକୁ ଆମେ ପରେ ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକୁ ତର୍ଜମା କରାଯାଏ ଏକ୍ଜାକ୍ଟଲି ପଲିସି ମେକିଂ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେଇଭଳି ତେଣୁ ଯେଉଁ ସିଷ୍ଟମ୍ସ ମଡେଲ କଥା वी आर डिस्कसिंग ସେଥିରେ ଆମେ ଜାଣିଲେ କ'ଣ ନା देयर आर इकोलॉजिकल सिस्टम बायोलॉजिकल सिस्टम पर्सनालिटी सिस्टम सोशल सिस्टम इकोलॉजिकल मीन्स एक्चुअली व्हाट इज द सराउंडिंग ऑफ द वी कैन से पॉलिसी मेकानिज्म और पॉलिसी मेसिनरी इज आल्सो देयर पॉलिसी मेसिनरी कहले हमें डायरेक्ट हमें गवर्नमेंट को बुझी पारिबा सो पॉलिसी मेसिनरी रो इकोलॉजीटा कौन तार सराउंडिंग कंडीशनटा कौन बायोलॉजिकल सिस्टम सेमती बायोलॉजिकल सिस्टम भी ता भितरे दैट मीन्स व्हिच रेफर्स टू द वी कैन से लिविंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स और लिविंग एलिमेंट्स व्हिच आर आल्सो अफेक्टेड और impacted within the policy system personality system those who are actually responsible for either policy making or policy implementation or policy evaluation policy making policy implementation policy evaluation so that is personality system similarly social system in which society actually the system is operating whether the system and the society they are consonant to each other or not that also needs to be found out ତେଣୁ ଇଏ ହେଲା ଇଣ୍ଟ୍ରା ସୋସିଏଟାଲ ଏନଭାଇରନମେଣ୍ଟ ଯୋଉଟା ଆମେ କହୁଥିଲେ ଇଣ୍ଟ୍ରା ସୋସିଏଟାଲ ଏନଭାଇରନମେଣ୍ଟ ତା ଭିତରେ ଆସୁଛି ଇକୋଲୋଜିକାଲ ବାୟୋଲୋଜିକାଲ पर्सनालिटी सोशल सिस्टम्स जोटा एक्स्ट्रा सोसिएटाल आम कहले जोटा सोसाइटी बाहर एक्स्ट्रा इंट्रा कहले भीतर एक्स्ट्रा कहले बाहर सो एक्स्ट्रा सोसिएटाल एनवायरनमेंट कहले ता भीतर आसीगला इंटरनेशनल पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम्स International political systems means there are a number of things. For example, other states, ଯେମିତିକି ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା farmers agitation in India, but France is responding, France is commenting, Canada is commenting, many other countries are also commenting on the farmers agitation in India. So this is international political systems. ତା ଛଡ଼ା there are many international organizations also, multilateral systems, ଯେମିତିକି ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା World Bank, WTO, IMF. These multilateral institutions, global institutions, are also very important nowadays, and they are playing very instrumental role not only in the matters of administration of these institutions themselves, rather they are also impacting the administration of different countries. So international ecological systems सबको मिसेले जोटा कुहाଯାଏ ecology. So international ecological systems and also international social systems. So inputs are seen as the physical, social, economic, political products of the environment. ତେଣୁ ଆ ଭିତରେ systems modelରେ କ'ଣ ହେଲା ନା inputs are seen as the physical, social, economic and political products of the environment. So environment also produces something. What it produces? It produces physical components or physical elements. Physical elements in the sense we can say that different human beings, who play some decisive role within the policy making process. Similarly, there is also your social products. Social products, that means from within the society, what are actually the social products, or what is there within the society which is going to influence the policy and also get influenced by the policy. So that is the social product of the environment. Social product and the environment ଆମେ ଯେମିତି କହିପାରିବା, ଧରାଯାଉ କୌଣସି ଗୋଟେ ପଲିସିରେ ଆସୁଛି କ'ଣ ନା farmers categoryଟା କହିଲେ they belong to a particular social group. So how that particular social group is also going to be impacted by a particular policy framed in relation to that group or that aspect. Similarly, economic product, that means different provisions, financial provisions, or how the different financial allocations which have been made for the fructification, for the realization of the policy. Because no policy can be successful without adequate financial provision. Without adequate financial provision, no policy can ever be successful. Okay, ଯେକୌଣସି ପଲିସି ପାଇଁ ଆମର ଦରକାର ଅର୍ଥ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା। ତେଣୁ ପଲିସିଟାକୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ କରିବା ପାଇଁ, ପଲିସିଟାକୁ ଫ୍ରୁଟଫୁଲ୍ କରିବା ପାଇଁ, ଫଳବତୀ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବରେ ଦରକାର ଆର୍ଥିକ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ସେଟାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ଇକୋନୋମିକ୍ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ଟ। ତେଣୁ ଇକୋନୋମିକ୍ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ଟ କହିଲେ ପ୍ରଥମେ ଅର୍ଥ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥାରେ ପଲିସି ତିଆରି ହେଲା, ତାପରେ ପଲିସିଟା ଯେତେବେଳେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ ହେଲା, ସେଥିରୁ ପୁଣି ଯେଉଁ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ଟ ଆସିଲା ସିଏ ବି କେତେ ଦୂର ଆର୍ଥିକ ସହାୟତା ଯୋଗେଇଲା କି ନା। ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆଲ ପଲିସି। ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରିଆଲ ପଲିସିରେ ପ୍ରଥମେ ଦରକାର ପଡ଼ିଲା ଷ୍ଟିଲ୍, ଆଇରନ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଷ୍ଟିଲ୍ ପ୍ଲାଣ୍ଟଟା ବସେଇବା ପାଇଁ। ତାପରେ ସେ ଆଇରନ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଷ୍ଟିଲ୍ ପ୍ଲାଣ୍ଟରୁ ଯେଉଁ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ଟ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ବାହାରିଲା ତାର ପୁଣି ମାର୍କେଟ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁ ଅଛି। So by after utilizing those resources or after selling those resources in the market, what further economic benefit could we get? That is also economic product. And similarly, political product. Political product means actually what is actually the government, what is the response from the government, what are the political parties they are saying, because political parties do also have their voice in connection with the policies. Similarly, there are also, we can say, different political institutions or structures like bureaucracy. So without bureaucracy, policy is also ineffectual or cannot be possible. So demands are the claims made on the political system by individuals and groups. Demands. So actually why policy is formulated? Because there is a demand. Demand from the side of the society, from the side of the people. So when there is unemployment, automatically the youth of the country put a demand on the system that please create more and more job opportunities. That is demand. Supports of a political system consist of rules, laws, customs. So support means how far the people are actually going to support a system and how the performance of the system will also improve further. So when we obey, suppose policy requires land acquisition. So if the people voluntarily come forward to uh, cooperate with the government in the process of land acquisition, that is support. But if the people do not support, then that is opposition. That cannot be viewed as a support. So at the heart of the political system are institutions and personnel for policy making. So policy making is done both by the institutions and the personnel or the individuals. So without them and without the institution, ତେଣୁ ଦୁଇଟା ଜିନିଷ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ପଲିସି ପାଇଁ ଆମେ ଜାଣିଲେ ଇନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନ ବା ଅନୁଷ୍ଠାନ ଦରକାର ଏବଂ ପର୍ସୋନେଲ ବା ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ମାନବ ସମ୍ବଳ those who are working in different capacities. ତା ଭିତରୁ ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା ପଲିସି ଫର୍ମୁଲେସନରେ କିଛି ରହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେମିତିକି ବିଗିନିଂରେ ମୁଁ କହୁଥିଲି ଲେଜିସ୍ଲେଚରର କାମ ହେଉଛି କ'ଣ ନା ପଲିସିଟାକୁ ତିଆରି କରିବା ପଲିସିକୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ କରିବା ହେଉଛି ଦାୟିତ୍ୱ କାହାର ନା ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭର ସୋ ପର୍ସନେଲ they are also very instrumental, very important in the process of, we can say, policy making. So here there is also mention about the executive, legislators, judges, bureaucrats. So they also contribute their due within the process of policy formulation. Systems theory portrays public policy as an output of the political system. So the system delivers something. When we think about a system, the system also performs. It also does some work. It performs certain functions. And that is desirable or that is in accordance with, that is also in accordance with the expectations of the members within the society. Now, some limits of the systems approach. Limits ଭିତରେ କ'ଣ କହିଲା ନା what are the significant dimensions of the environment that generate demands upon the political system? So, where from the demands are coming, that will automatically impact. If the demand is very high, demand is too tall, then sometimes the system may not be able to perform, may not be able to deliver according to expectations. Similarly, again, what are the significant characteristics of the political system that enable it to transform demands into public policy? There is also limit to the system in this respect, that significant characteristics of the political system. So what is actually the characteristic of the political system? You know, a democratic political system is very helpful. An authoritarian political system is very dominating. A communist system operates in a different manner. ତେଣୁ ଜେନେରାଲି ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ପବ୍ଲିକ ପଲିସି କଥା କହୁଛେ ଏଇଟା ସବୁଠାରୁ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ ହେଇଥାଏ କେବଳ ଗୋଟିଏ ଡେମୋକ୍ରାସିରେ। ଅନ୍ୟଠି ବି ପଲିସି ଅଛି, କମ୍ୟୁନିଷ୍ଟ ସିଷ୍ଟମରେ ପଲିସି ଅଛି, ମୋନାର୍କିକାଲ ସିଷ୍ଟମରେ ବି ପଲିସି ଅଛି, ବା other systems that are available throughout the world, they are also following this approach. They are also devising policies, framing policies, formulating policies, and also trying to implement them. But thing is that What is the characteristics of the political system? ତେଣୁ କୋଉ ସିଷ୍ଟମରେ ପଲିସିଟା ତିଆରି କରିବା ଏବଂ ତାକୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ କରିବା ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଉପାଦେୟ ବା ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ସହଜ ସାଧ୍ୟ, ସେଇଟା ହେଉଛି ଜିନିଷ। ତେଣୁ ଗୋଟେ ଗଣତନ୍ତ୍ରରେ ବା ଡେମୋକ୍ରାଟିକ ସିଷ୍ଟମରେ ପଲିସି ଫର୍ମୁଲେସନ୍, ଇମ୍ପ୍ଲିମେଣ୍ଟେସନ୍, ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁସନଟା ଯେତେ ସହଜିଆ ଅନ୍ୟ ସିଷ୍ଟମରେ ସେତିକି ନୁହେଁ। ଇଏ ହେଉଛି ଜିନିଷ। ତେଣୁ ଇଏ ହେଲା ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଲିମିଟେସନ୍। ଥାର୍ଡ ଲିମିଟେସନ୍ ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା, ହାଉ ଡୁ ଏନଭିରନମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଇନପୁଟ୍ସ ଆଫେକ୍ଟ ଦ କ୍ୟାରେକ୍ଟର ଅଫ୍ ଦ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ସିଷ୍ଟମ। ଏନଭିରନମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଇନପୁଟ୍ସ ଯୋଉଟାକି ଆମେ କ'ଣ ନା ଧରାଯାଉ ଆମେ ଯଦି କରୁଛେ ଇନଫ୍ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚରାଲ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ପଲିସି ଅଫ୍ ଦ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍। ତେଣୁ ତା ଭିତରକୁ ଇନପୁଟ୍ ଗଲା କ'ଣ ନା ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଆମର କେତେ ଆଲୋକେସନ୍ ଦରକାର, ସେଇ ଯେଉଁ ଆଲୋକେସନ୍ ଆସିଲା କେଉଁ କେଉଁ ସୋର୍ସରୁ ଆସିଲା, ଆମ ପାଖରେ ଅଲରେଡ଼ି ଏକ୍ଜିଷ୍ଟିଂ ରିସୋର୍ସେସ୍ କେତେ ଅଛି, ଯେଉଁଟାକୁ ଆମେ ତିଆରି କରିବା ବା ଦିସ୍ input which will go into the system, whether that will be adequate or not, all these things. So input ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା କ'ଣ ନା ରିସୋର୍ସ ଆଲୋକେସନ୍ କାହିଁକି ନା ପ୍ରତି ପ୍ଲାନିଂ ପାଇଁ ଆମର ରିସୋର୍ସ ଦରକାର, ହ୍ୟୁମାନ୍ ମ୍ୟାଟେରିଆଲ ରିସୋର୍ସେସ୍। ତେଣୁ ହ୍ୟୁମାନ୍ ମ୍ୟାଟେରିଆଲ ରିସୋର୍ସେସ୍ଟା ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ କ୍ୟାନ୍ ବି କନସିଡର୍ଡ ଆଜ୍ ଦି ଇନପୁଟ୍ ଇଣ୍ଟୁ ଦ ସିଷ୍ଟମ୍। ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ସିନା ଅର୍ଥ ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥାର ପ୍ରାବଧାନ କରିଥିଲେ ଗୋଟେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ ସମ୍ପାଦିତ ହେଇପାରିବ। ଆମେ ଯଦି ପୂର୍ବରୁ କିଛି ବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା ଗ୍ରହଣ ନ କରିଥିବା ତାହେଲେ ଆମ ପାଖକୁ ଆସିବ କୁଆଡ଼ୁ? ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଖାଦ୍ୟ ଖାଇଲେ ଦେହକୁ ଏନର୍ଜି ଆସିବ, ଆଉ କିଛି ଆମେ ଇନପୁଟ୍ ଦେବା ନାହିଁ, ଦେହ ଭିତରକୁ ନେବା ନାହିଁ, ଆମେ ଶୂନ୍ୟରୁ କହିବା ଆମ ଦେହଟା ସେମିତି ପରଫର୍ମ କରିଚାଲିବ। ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ଇମ୍ପସିବଲ୍। ସିମିଲାରଲି, ସୋ ଇନପୁଟ୍ସ ଆର୍ ଅଲସୋ ଏନଭିରନମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଇନପୁଟ୍ସ ଆଫେକ୍ଟ ଦ କ୍ୟାରେକ୍ଟର ଅଫ୍ ଦି ପଲିଟିକାଲ ସିଷ୍ଟମ। ଯେମିତି ଆମେ ଭଲ ଖାଦ୍ୟ ଖାଇଲେ ଭଲ ଏନର୍ଜି ଆସେ, ନ୍ୟୁଟ୍ରିସସ୍ ଫୁଡ୍ ଖାଇଲେ ଆମର ଦେହର ମାନେ କ'ଣ ରୋଗ ପ୍ରତିରୋଧକ ଶକ୍ତି ବଢ଼େ ବା ଆମର ଏଫେକ୍ଟିଭ୍ ଆମର ଯେଉଁଟାକୁ ଆଉଟପୁଟ୍ ଏଫେକ୍ଟିଭନେସ୍ଟା ବଢ଼େ। ଏକ୍ଜାକ୍ଟଲି ସିଷ୍ଟମ୍ସ କେସ୍ରେ ବି ସେଇଆ। ଯଦି ଇନପୁଟ୍ ପ୍ରପର୍ ଅଛି ତାହେଲେ ପରଫର୍ମାନ୍ସ ଭଲ ହେଇପାରିବ, ଯଦି ଇନପୁଟ୍ ରୋଗିଣା ପରଫର୍ମାନ୍ସ ବି ରୋଗିଣା ହେବ। Similarly, how do characteristics of the political system affect the content of public policy? Content of public policy. That means what is there in detail. That is known as content. So contentଟା ହେଉଛି ଗୋଟେ କ'ଣ ନା ଡିଟେଲ୍ଡ ଆସ୍ପେକ୍ଟ ଯେଉଁଟା ତା ଭିତରେ ରହିବ। ସେଇଟା ଧରାଯାଉ ଆମେ କହିଦେଉଛେ ଇନଫ୍ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚରାଲ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ। ଇନଫ୍ରାଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚରାଲ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ କହିଲେ ତା ଭିତରେ ରୋଡ୍ସ ଆସୁଛି, ରେଲୱେଜ୍ ଆସୁଛି, ପୋର୍ଟସ୍ ଆସୁଛି, ଏୟାରପୋର୍ଟସ୍ ଆସୁଛି। So there are so many things, and that is known as, we can say, the characteristics of the political system, uh, uh, the content, yes, content of public policy. So what is actually the content or the details involved within the public policy? How do environmental inputs affect the content of public policy? So that is also to be determined by those who are responsible for policy making. And how does public policy affect through feedback the environment and the character of the political system? So that is ultimately, that means when the output goes into the environment will assess the output, and again there will be feedback coming back to the input stage. ତେଣୁ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ ପଲିସିଟା ଠିକ୍ ଭାବରେ ସକ୍ସେସଫୁଲ୍ ହେଇପାରେ ନାହିଁ, ତା ଉପରେ ଯେଉଁ ମତାମତଟା ଆସେ, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ନୋନ୍ ଆଜ୍ ଫିଡବ୍ୟାକ୍। So feedback is a positive thing. Feedback also helps the policy makers, policy implementers to reorient their approach, redesign their approach. They can very well know where we failed, what we can do in order to succeed. କୋଉଠି ଆମର ଅସୁବିଧାଟା ରହିଲା, କ'ଣ କଲେ ସେ ଅସୁବିଧାଟା ଦୂରେଇ ଦିଆଯାଇପାରିବ। So that is known as, we can say, that is determined from the feedback. So now let us come to the institutional approach. So this is briefly something about the systems approach. Now another approach, that is known as institutional approach. institution. So here the focus will be purely on the institution. ସେଠି ଗୋଟେ ଆମେ ଫୋକସଟା ରହୁଥିଲା କ'ଣ ନା ଏଣ୍ଟାୟାର ଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ଚରଟାକୁ ଗୋଟେ ସିଷ୍ଟମ ବୋଲି ପରିଗଣିତ କରୁଥିଲା। ଆଉ ସିଷ୍ଟମ୍ସ ମଡେଲ କହିଲେ exactly whatever parallelism was there with Estonian approach, that was the main framework of analysis. But here we shall see that a state is a web of government structures and institutions. ତେଣୁ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ଭିତରେ ଆମେ ଜାଣୁଛେ there are varieties of institutions, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ତାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା web of government structures। web କହିଲେ କ'ଣ? ଜାଲ। web of government structures and institutions. So varieties of institutions are there which are operating within the system, within the state, within the state. Okay. गवर्नमेंट कहले भी आमे गवर्नमेंट कहले भी तार भीतर पुनी आहुरी फर्दर सब डिविजन होची कोन। देयर इज लेजिस्लेचर, देयर इज एग्जीक्यूटिव, देयर इज जुडिशियरी। इवन ता भीतर हमरो अछि प्रेस भी अछि, पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज भी अछंती, प्रेशर ग्रुप्स अछंती, इंटरेस्ट ग्रुप्स अछंती। Okay, so that is they are we can say different structures and institutions, and the positive state is regarded as the guardian of all sections of the community. So when there is proper balance, all the institutions they are maintained well, they do their functions properly, then that is considered as a positive state. नेगेटिव स्टेट भी ହେଇପାରିବ। ନେଗେଟିଭ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ କ'ଣ? ଜେନେରାଲି ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା ଅଥରିଟାରିଆନ୍ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ଯେଉଁଗୁଡ଼ାକ they can be described as negative states where everything depends on the coercive power of the state and there is no liberty to the different institutions which are there within the state itself. But in a democracy, all the institutions they enjoy certain amount of freedom, certain amount of liberty to do or to operate in the manner they like. Okay. So the positive state is regarded as the guardian of all sections of the community. All sections of the community. Let us take the Indian state as an example. So what are the all sections of the community? There are Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Jains, Christians, Sikhs. So that is known as different communities. And all these communities, they are balanced well within a state. All communities, they think that we are getting due attention from the state. So when that type of feeling comes, when the people start trusting the state, that can be described as a positive state. If a state fails in extracting or in getting the uh, we can say they lose faith in we can say the gaining the confidence of the different communities, that can be described as a negative state. Okay. So public policy is formulated, implemented and enforced by governmental institutions. So that is very we can say common sense. Policies are formulated by the government institutions, governmental institutions. Policy is formulated, implemented and enforced by governmental institutions. ଯେମିତିକି ବିଗିନିଂରୁ ମୁଁ କହୁଥିଲି କ'ଣ, ଆମେ ଜାଣିଛେ କମନଲି ପଲିସି ଫର୍ମୁଲେସନ ହେଉଛି ଲେଜିସ୍ଲେଚରର କାମ, ଇମ୍ପ୍ଲିମେଣ୍ଟେସନ ହେଉଛି ଏକ୍ଜିକ୍ୟୁଟିଭର କାମ। ସୋ ସେମିତି enforced, implemented and enforced by the governmental institutions. Enforcement be that is also part of the we can say uh, executive. Sometimes the judiciary also comes to the rescue of the executive, comes to the rescue of the executive, because when there is any we can say shortcoming or any we can say that is suppose some sections are not coming forward to obey whatever has been the policy statement in a particular connection, say for example communal harmony, then it will automatically be ensured by the intervention of the judiciary. जोटाके आमे अनेक समय शुणुचे कहीपे जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म बोली कौन क्षेत्र में जितेबले कार्यकारिता धिमी जाए सेतेबले कौन हुए ना आम कंट्री जहाँ प्रैक्टिस अच्छी जुडिशियरी आगे आसे सेटा को आमे जुडिशियल एक्टिविज्म बोली कही थाए तेणु कोठी जदि लेथार्जी बा कोठी जदि नेग्लिजेंस आसी थाए कौनसी पॉलिसी को कार्यकारिता करिबारे ताले सेतेबेले कौन हुए ना इवन बेले बेले जुडिशियरी भी इंटरवेन करि थाए सेति पे एडजुडिकेशन भी जोटा को आमे कहूचे फंक्शन गोटे स्टेट फंक्शन भीतर एडजुडिकेशन टा भी दैट इज आल्सो जुडिशियल रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी सो द government institutions give public policy three different characteristics. Government institutions give public policy three different characteristics. ତେଣୁ ଯେଉଁଗୁଡ଼ିକ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଇନଷ୍ଟିଟ୍ୟୁସନ୍ ସେଗୁଡ଼ିକ ପଲିସିକୁ ତିନୋଟି ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱର ସହିତ ବିଚାର କରନ୍ତି ବା ଆଟେନସନ୍ ଦେଇଥାନ୍ତି। ହେଲା ପ୍ରଥମେ ହେଲା କ'ଣ ନା ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟଲି ଦି ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ gives legal authority to policies. Policies need to be backed by legal authority, otherwise nobody will obey the policies. ତେଣୁ ପଲିସିଟାକୁ ଖାଲି ଇସ୍ୟୁ କରିଦେଲେ ବା ଷ୍ଟେଟମେଣ୍ଟ ଆକାରରେ ଡିକ୍ଲାର କରିଦେଲେ ସେଟା କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ ହେଇଯାଏ ନାହିଁ। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଦରକାର କ'ଣ ନା ଲିଗାଲ ଅଥରିଟି। ଲିଗାଲ ଅଥରିଟି କାହାର ନା ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ର, କାହିଁକିନା ଆମେ ଜାଣୁଛେ ଗୋଟେ ଡେମୋକ୍ରାଟିକ୍ ସୋସାଇଟି ବା ଡେମୋକ୍ରାଟିକ୍ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ରେ ପଲିସି କମ୍ସ ଫ୍ରମ୍ ଦ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍। ଅନ୍ୟ ଗୁଡ଼ାକୁ ବି ପଲିସି କୁହାଯାଇପାରିବ, ପ୍ରାଇଭେଟ ସେକ୍ଟରରେ ବି ତାଙ୍କର ବି ପଲିସି ଅଛି, କିନ୍ତୁ ସେ ପଲିସିର ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ଏଣ୍ଟାୟାର ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ପାଇଁ ନୁହେଁ ବା କମନ୍ ସୋସାଇଟି ପାଇଁ ନୁହେଁ ବା କମନ୍ ପବ୍ଲିକ ପାଇଁ ନୁହେଁ। ତେଣୁ ପ୍ରାଇଭେଟ ପଲିସି ଇଜ୍ ଓନ୍ଲି meaningful for that private organization itself, but public policy is wider in implication, wider in application, wider in importance. It affects the entire society, the entire population of the state itself. So public policy is something which emanates from the state, comes out of the state. ତେଣୁ ଅବଭିୟସଲି ଯୋଉଟା ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ରୁ ଆସୁଛି ମାନେ ତାର ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବରେ ଲିଗାଲ ଅଥରିଟି ଅଛି। ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ହେଲା ଆପ୍ଲିକେସନ ଅଫ ପବ୍ଲିକ ପଲିସି ଇଜ୍ ୟୁନିଭର୍ସାଲ। ଆପ୍ଲିକେସନ ଅଫ ପବ୍ଲିକ ପଲିସି ଇଜ୍ ୟୁନିଭର୍ସାଲ। ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ କ'ଣ ଭୋଟିଂ ରାଇଟଟା ହେଉଛି ୟୁନିଭର୍ସାଲ, ସେମିତି ଯେଉଁ ପଲିସିଟା ଧରାଯାଉ ଏଡୁକେସନ ପଲିସି ବାଇ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ଅଫ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ, so it is applicable all over India, irrespective of any religion, caste, sex, place of birth, all sorts of divisions. So that is universally applicable. ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆମେ କହିବା କ'ଣ ନା policy is with universal application, obligation. Third ହେଲା public policies involve coercion. Coercion means power of punishment. So when anybody disobeys the policy, that person or that group or that community can be punished by the state. Okay, so that is known as coercion. So whenever something is issued by the state or in state capacity that is backed by the legal authority, so when there is legal authority, there is definitely provision for punishment if somebody disobeys the policy. ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ କ'ଣ ନା ସପୋଜ ଆମେ ଜାଣୁଛେ ଯେମିତି ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ପଲିସି ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟର ବି ଅଛି, ଆମର ଯେଉଁ କହୁଛେ ଆମେ ବଜେଟ୍ ବା ହେଲା বা ଫିସ୍କାଲ ପଲିସି ଅଫ୍ ଦ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ବା ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ପଲିସି ଅଫ୍ ଦ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍। ତେଣୁ ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ କ'ଣ ନା ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଫିକ୍ସ କରାଗଲା ଯେ ଏ ଏଇ କ୍ୟାଟେଗୋରୀର ଲୋକ ଏତିକି ପରସେଣ୍ଟର ଇନକମ୍ ଟ୍ୟାକ୍ସ ଦେବେ। କିଏ ହୁଏତ ବିଜନେସମ୍ୟାନ୍ ହେଇଥାଉ ତାର ଅଲଗା ପରସେଣ୍ଟେଜ, କିଏ ଚାକିରିଆ ହେଇଥାଉ ତାର ଅଲଗା ପରସେଣ୍ଟେଜ, କିଏ ସ୍ମଲ୍ ସ୍କେଲ୍ ଇଣ୍ଡଷ୍ଟ୍ରି କରିଛି ତା ପାଇଁ ଅଲଗା ପରସେଣ୍ଟେଜ। ତେଣୁ ଯିଏ ନ ଦେବ ମାନେ ସେଠି ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ପର୍ସନ୍ ୱିଲ୍ ବି ପନିଶ୍ଡ। ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ନୋନ୍ ଆଜ୍ କୋଅର୍ସନ୍। ସେଥିପାଇଁ କୁହାଗଲା policies involve coercion. That means whenever there is any violation of the policy, automatically there is provision for punishment. So, this is briefly something about the institutional approach. That means how government is an institution, or different institutions within the government also, they are institutions, and particularly we see policies are instruments released by the institutions. So policies are nothing but they are, we can say, expressions or output from the different institutions which have been vested with that responsibility. ତେଣୁ ଯାହାକୁ ସେ ଦାୟିତ୍ୱ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି, ଧରାଯାଉ ଲେଜିସ୍ଲେଚରକୁ ଦାୟିତ୍ୱ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି, ତେଣୁ ଲେଜିସ୍ଲେଚର ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି ତା କାମଟି କରିବ। ତେଣୁ legislature as an institution is responsible for policy formulation. Executive as an institution is responsible for policy execution. Okay. And judiciary is there, that is also another government institution which also plays some active role in connection with policy formulation, policy execution, or policy implementation, etc., etc. Okay, so this is briefly something about the institutional approach. Now, there is also your rational policy making model. Rational, very simply speaking, let me clarify what is rational. Rational means the ability to judge between right and wrong. Okay, very simply speaking, rational approach means the ability or an approach which is capable of distinguishing the right from the wrong, good from the bad. So that is known as rational. Rational policy making model means here policy making is always rational, not irrational. If it is irrational, it cannot be a public policy. Remember this much. If a policy is not rational, how it cannot be rational? Because human beings are known as rational beings. So human beings are quite rational. Rational doesn't mean that they always will be doing the good thing or the right thing. Rationality means ability to judge between the pros and cons, good and bad, right and wrong, just and unjust. So this is known as rationality. Okay. So rational policy making model, this is rationality is considered to be the yardstick of wisdom. Yardstick of wisdom. Amara wisdom ro mapokati. That means how far we have wisely done it. ତେଣୁ ଯେଉଁ ପଲିସିଟା ହେଇଛି ସେଇଟା ୱାଇଜଲି ହେଇଛି ବା ୱାଇଜ ମ୍ୟାନରରେ ହେଇଛି ନା ଗୋଟେ ଅନୱାଇଜ ଥିଙ୍ଗ ହେଇଛି, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ ଦ ଥିଙ୍ଗ। ତେଣୁ ସେଇଟା ହିଁ ଆମକୁ ଜଣେଇଦେବ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ପଲିସିଟା ଠିକ ବାଟରେ ଯାଉଛି କି ନା। ସେଥିପାଇଁ କୁହାଗଲା ରାସନାଲ ପଲିସି ଆପ୍ରୋଚ। And this also helps us in choosing the one best option. ତେଣୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମ ପାଖରେ ରାସନାଲ ଆବିଲିଟି ଅଛି, ଆମର ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବରେ କାପାସିଟି ଅଛି ଟୁ ଡିଷ୍ଟିଂଗୁଇଶ ହ୍ୱିଚ୍ ଇଜ୍ ଦ ବେଷ୍ଟ ଅପସନ୍। ପଲିସିରେ ବି ପଲିସି ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ସ ଗୋଟେ ଆସେ। ସୋ there are different alternatives which are stated from time to time or from category to category, and automatically one best way is the most effective manner of determining or deciding to uh, pinpoint a particular course of action. ତେଣୁ ଏଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ନିହାତି କମନ୍ ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିସ୍। ଯେତେବେଳେ ପଲିସି ଫର୍ମୁଲେସନ୍ କରାଯାଏ ସେଥିରେ ସବୁ स्टेप 1 स्टेप 2 स्टेप 3 बा अल्टरनेटिव 1 2 3 4 आकार सब स्टेट कर दिया जाए, क्लियरली स्टेटमेंट तैयारी कर दिया जाए। ता भितरु तापर विवेचना करा जाए व्हिच विल बी एक्चुअली द मोस्ट रिवार्डिंग ऑप्शन। को बाटरे आमे गले बा को चॉइस टिकी आपणइले हमकु मैक्सिमम रिजल्ट मिलिबो। So that is rationalism or that is rationality. ତେଣୁ one best to choose the one best option। ତେଣୁ ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ଆମେ rational policy making model ବୋଲି କହିଲେ, that model helps us in identifying the one best option, because policy means a series of options, a series of options, okay? In matters of employment, ऑप्शन 1 ऑप्शन 2 ऑप्शन 3 वेदर कहीं ता भीतर विभिन्न प्रकार आसीपर। पोस्ट ग्राजुएट मान कौन करा जाई परिबो, ग्राजुएट मान कौन करा जाई परिबो, हाई स्कूल गोअर मान कौन करा जाई परिबो, फंक्शनल लिटरेट मान कौन करा जाई परिबो। सो दैट इज वी कैन से ग्रेडेशन और वी कैन से डिफरेंट अल्टरनेटिव्स, पॉलिसी अल्टरनेटिव्स। सो से सब अल्टरनेटिव भितरु कोटाकू आपणइले बेस्ट ऑप्शन बोली ताकू ग्रहण करा जाई परिबो। रॉबर्ट हैबमैन observes that rational policy is one which is designed to maximize net value achievement। net value achievement, net value achievement माने जेमते हमें कौन कहे ना ग्रॉस आउ नेट, ए दुईटा जाकू अनेक समय हमें तुलना करे। ग्रॉस आउ नेट, ग्रॉस कहले मोटामोटी ऊपर केते फायदा, नेट कहले पूरा एकदम हमर ठीक जोटा हमको फायदा दिए सेटा। तेणु ग्रॉस कहले मोटामोटी, नेट कहले एग्जैक्ट जिनिस जोटा हमको फायदा मिले। तेणु नेट वैल्यू अचीवमेंट, दैट मीन्स rational policy model or rational policy making model helps us in arriving at the net value achievement। So Thomas Dye equates rationality with efficiency। Thomas Dye, he has also equated rationality with efficiency। That means if you are rational, you are efficient. If you are not rational, you are not efficient। That is the thing। A policy is rational when it is most efficient, that is, if the ratio between the values it achieves and the values it sacrifices is positive। तेणु जो भैल्यू अचीव करिवो एवं जो भैल्यू को सैक्रिफाइस करिवो, दुईटा जाक को ऐड करदेले जदि भैल्यू पॉजिटिव हैला, ताहले हमें कहि परिबा जे सेटा गोटा रैशनल पॉलिसी चॉइस बा रैशनल पॉलिसी मॉडल हमको सेई बाटर हेल्प करे। ओके, माने अति सिंपलिस्टिक लैंग्वेज रे कहिले आमे मिसेई दवा दीटा जाक को, फायदा हमर केते, लॉस हमर केते। जदि दुईटा जाक मिसेई देला पर हमको गोटे पॉजिटिव रिजल्ट मिलुची, पॉजिटिव वैल्यू आसुची, ताहले हम करिबा कहि परिबा जे फायदा हमर अधिका, तेणु आमे से बाटर जिबा। किंतु जदि आमे देखिबा गोटे नेगेटिव वैल्यू आसिला, माइनस आसिला, दुईटा जाक को ऐड करि देले, ताहले सेठी आमे कहि परिबा कोन ना आमे जाउछे लॉस बाटर। तेणु सेठी आमे केबे आगो को जाई परिबा नाही, से ऑप्शन को हमको क्लोज डाउन करिबा को पड़िबो। Okay, so that is the capacity of we can say rational policy choice model। Now the political policy makers should be rational, but it is not easy। In order to be rational, it is desirable that there should be these qualities। तेणु rational हबा को हेले केतोटी क्वालिटीज थिबा दरकार। समस्ते जे सब बेले rational ता माने नाही। तेणु कौन कौन क्वालिटीज एठी दिया जाइछि हमर क्वालिटीज हला आइडेंटिफिकेशन एंड डिटरमिनेशन ऑफ द गोल्स। सो देयर मस्ट बी एबिलिटी टू आइडेंटिफाई एंड आल्सो टू डिटरमिन द गोल्स। लक्ष्य धार्य करि पारुथिबार कैपेबिलिटी निहाती थिबा दरकार, ताहले जे हम कहि परिबा जे राशनल। सेकेंड होची रैंकिंग ऑफ गोल्स इन ऑर्डर ऑफ इंपोर्टेंस, जोटा को कहउथली गोल 1 गोल 2 गोल 3 गोल 4 सेटा हला रैंक ऑर्डर ऑफ गोल्स। तेणु जदि हमको फोर्थ गोलटा ଆମେ ଚାହିଁବା ସବୁବେଳେ ନମ୍ବର ୱାନ୍ ଗୋଲଟାକୁ ଆଚିଭ୍ କରିବା ପାଇଁ। କିନ୍ତୁ ନମ୍ବର ୱାନ୍‌ଟା ଆଚିଭ୍ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ହେଲେ ଆମେ ଦେଖୁଛେ ବହୁତ ଏନର୍ଜି, ବହୁତ ରିସୋର୍ସ ୟୁଟିଲାଇଜେସନ୍ ଦରକାର। ବହୁତ ଏନର୍ଜି, ମ୍ୟାନ୍ ପାୱାର ଦରକାର, ରିସୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଦରକାର, କିନ୍ତୁ ଆମ ପାଖରେ ନାହିଁ। ଯଦି ଆମ ପାଖରେ ସମ୍ବଳ ନାହିଁ, ତାହେଲେ ଆମେ କାହିଁକି ଅପସନ୍ 1କୁ ଯିବା? ହ୍ୱାଇ ନଟ୍ କମ୍ ଡାଉନ୍ ଟୁ ଅପସନ୍ 2? ଅପସନ୍ 2ରେ ଦେଖାଯିବ ଯେ ହ୍ୱାଟ୍ ଆର୍ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ଆଭେଲେବଲ୍ ରିସୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଆଟ୍ ଆୱାର ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ, and if those resources are adequate to fulfill the goal 2, then obviously we will go for goal 2. Otherwise we will have to abdicate that and come down to goal 3. So that is known as ranking of goals in order of importance. That is also again required in connection with what is known as your rational policy choice model. Identification of possible policy alternatives for achieving those goals. Then policy alternatives. ଯେମିତି goal ranking, ତାପରେ ଆସିଗଲା policy alternatives. Which policy will help us in arriving at or achieving a particular goal. Then cost benefit analysis of policy alternatives. Cost and benefit. So what will be the cost incurred and what will be the benefit after the policy is implemented successfully. ତେଣୁ ପଲିସି କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଆମର କେତେ କଷ୍ଟ ଦରକାର ଏବଂ ପଲିସିଟାକୁ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରୀ କଲା ପରେ ଆମକୁ ଫାଇଦା କେତେ ମିଳିବ, that has to be determined. Cost benefit analysis. ତେଣୁ ଇନଷ୍ଟିଚ୍ୟୁସନାଲ ଲେଭେଲରେ ଯେକୌଣସି କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ କରିବା ପୂର୍ବରୁ କଷ୍ଟ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ କରାଯାଇଥାଏ। କଷ୍ଟ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ହେଉଛି ଭେରି ଫଣ୍ଡାମେଣ୍ଟାଲ, ଭେରି ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ। ଆଉ ଯଦି ଆମର କଷ୍ଟ ଅଧିକା ବେନିଫିଟ୍ କମ୍, ତାହେଲେ ଆମେ ଯଦି ସେ ବାଟେ ଯାଉଛେ ତାହେଲେ institution will be doomed. If the benefit is more, cost is less comparatively, then that option is very acceptable, very desirable, and also we will immediately go ahead along that path. So a policy maker wedded to rational policy making must, ତେଣୁ ଯିଏ ଜଣେ ପଲିସି ମେକର ଏବଂ ଯାହାର ରାସନାଲ ପଲିସି ମେକିଂ ପ୍ରତି ଇନକ୍ଲିନେସନ୍ ଅଛି, ତା ପାଖରେ ଏଇ କ୍ୱାଲିଟିଜ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ଥିବା ଦରକାର। କ'ଣ ନା ହି ଅର୍ ସି ମଷ୍ଟ ନୋ all the society's value preferences and their relative weights. Societyର value preference କ'ଣ? Societyର value preference ଧରାଯାଉ ଆମେ କହିବା ଯେ ପଲିସି ହେଉଛି ଗୋଟେ କ'ଣ ନା ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ରାଇଟ୍ ଅଫ୍ ଦି LGBTQ। ଧରାଯାଉ LGBTQକୁ କାହିଁକିନା ଅନେକ ଏଣ୍ଟାୟାର ୱାର୍ଲଡରେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଚାଲିଛି କଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଭର୍ସି ତା ଉପରେ ଯେ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ସେମ୍ ସେକ୍ସ ମ୍ୟାରେଜକୁ ଆଲାଉ କରାଯିବା ଉଚିତ କି ନା। ଅନେକ ସୋସିଏଟାଲ ବ୍ୟାରିୟର ଅଛି, ସୋସାଇଟି ତାକୁ କେବେ ବି ଗ୍ରହଣ କରୁନି। କିନ୍ତୁ ଲିବରାଲ ଥିଓରି କହୁଛି ଯେ ନାଇଁ, ଏଭ୍ରିବଡି ହାଜ୍ ଏ ରାଇଟ୍ ଅର୍ ଏଭ୍ରିବଡି ହାଜ୍ ଏ ଚଏସ୍। ତେଣୁ ଏବଂ ପ୍ରତି ଚଏସ୍ ଯଦି ନଟ୍ ୱିଦାଉଟ୍ କୋଅର୍ସନ୍, ଦେନ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ choice made by adults must be respected. କିନ୍ତୁ law ସିନା ତାକୁ କହିଦେଉଛି respected, society is not accepting it. So these are known as values of the society. ଆଗରୁ ସେମିତି ଆମେ ଜାଣୁଛେ ସତୀ ପ୍ରଥା ସୋସାଇଟିରେ ଚାଲୁଥିଲା, that was a value preference of the society. କିନ୍ତୁ ଗ୍ରାଜୁଆଲି ଟାଇମ୍ ଆସିଲା, ସେ value preferenceଟା ବଦଳିଗଲା। So this, that is known as, we can say, know all the society's value preferences and their relative weights. ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ସିନା କହିଦେବା ହଁ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ସେମ୍ ସେକ୍ସ ମ୍ୟାରେଜକୁ ଆଲାଉ କରାଯାଉ, ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଲୋକ କ'ଣ ତାକୁ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରୁଛନ୍ତି କି? ଜିନିଷ ହେଉଛି ସେଟା। ତେଣୁ ସୋସାଇଟି ଆଣ୍ଡ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍, ହିୟର ଦେ ଆର୍ କମିଂ ଇନ୍ କନଫ୍ଲିକ୍ଟ ୱିଥ୍ ଇଚ୍ ଅଦର। ସୋସାଇଟି ଆଣ୍ଡ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍, ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ କହୁଛି ସେମ୍ ସେକ୍ସ ମ୍ୟାରେଜ ପସିବଲ୍ ବା ପରମିସିବଲ୍, ସୋସାଇଟି କହୁଛି ନୋ। So this is known as, we can say, value preference and their relative weights also. Relatively, which is more important, which is less important, that is weight. It must be known to the policymaker. Policymaker should also clarify the goals and objectives and rank them. So what are my goals? Who is the policymaker? The policymaker will know what is his or her goal and what is ultimately the objective. Also he or she should know all the policy alternatives available. କେତେଟା ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ ମୋ ପାଖରେ ଅଛି, କେତେଟା ଚଏସ୍ ମୋ ପାଖରେ ଅଛି, ଲେଟ୍ ମି ସି। ସୋ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ନୋନ୍ ଆଜ୍ ପଲିସି ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ସ। କାହିଁକିନା ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ କୌଣସି ପଲିସି, ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପଲିସି କହିଲେ ସେଠି ଗୋଟିଏ ମାତ୍ର ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ ନାହିଁ। ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପଲିସି କହିଲେ ତୁମର ପ୍ୟାଡି ପଲିସି ଗୋଟେ ହେଇପାରିବ, ସୁଗର କେନ୍ ପଲିସି ହେଇପାରିବ, ପଲସେସ୍ ପଲିସି ହେଇପାରିବ, ସିରିଏଲ୍ସ ପାଇଁ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍ ଗୋଟେ ଅଲଗା ହେଇପାରିବ। ସୋ that is known as, we can say, know all the policy alternatives। ତେଣୁ ଓଭରଅଲ୍ ଆସିଲା ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପଲିସି, କିନ୍ତୁ ତାରି ଭିତରେ କୋଉଠି ସିରିଆଲ୍ସ ହେଇପାରିବ, କୋଉଠି ପଲସେସ୍ ହେଇପାରିବ, କୋଉଠି ଅନ୍ୟ କିଛି ହେଇପାରିବ, ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ସବୁ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ଅଛି। ତା ସହିତ ପୁଣି ଆମକୁ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ କ'ଣ ନା, ହାଉ ଫାର୍ वी आर ପ୍ରିପେୟାର୍ଡ ଟୁ actually provide the sufficient support like your fertilizers or manures, pesticides, etc., which can be provided to the agriculturists at the right time। ये ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ବି ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡୁଛି। Compare the consequences of each policy alternative, then what can be the consequence of each alternative। ଯଦି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ପ୍ୟାଡି ପଲିସି, ତାହେଲେ ପ୍ୟାଡି କଲ୍ଟିଭେସନ ରେ compare the consequences of each policy alternative। ପ୍ୟାଡି କଲ୍ଟିଭେସନ କୋଉଠାରେ ହେଇପାରିବ ବେଟର, କୋଉଠି ନ ହେଇପାରିବ। ଡେଜର୍ଟ ଏରିଆରେ ଆମେ ଯାଇକି ପଶିବା କି ପ୍ୟାଡି କଲ୍ଟିଭେସନ ପାଇଁ? ରାଜସ୍ଥାନରେ ଆମେ ଯଦି କହିବା ରାଇସ୍ କଲ୍ଟିଭେସନ ପାଇଁ, will it ever work? So the compare the consequences of each policy alternative। ତେଣୁ ଯୋଉ ଯୋଉ policy alternative ତାର consequence କ'ଣ ହେଇପାରିବ ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। Calculate the ratio of achieved to sacrificed societal values। So which values have been achieved, which values which we had to sacrifice। ସବୁ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁକୁ ସମ୍ମାନ ଦେଇ ହବ ନାହିଁ, ସବୁ ଭାବଧାରା, ସବୁ ବିବେଚନାକୁ ସମ୍ମାନ ଦେଇ ହବ ନାହିଁ। କୋଉଟାକୁ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିହବ, କୋଉଟାକୁ ଆମକୁ ଆଖି ବୁଜି ଦେବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ତେଣୁ ସେଟାକୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା କେବଳ ଗୋଟେ ରାସନାଲ ପଲିସି ମେକର ପାଖରେ ହିଁ ସମ୍ଭବ। Select the most efficient policy alternative that matches with the goals। ତାପରେ ଏଇଟାକୁ ସିଲେକ୍ଟ କର which matches with the goals। ଆମର ଗୋଲ୍ କ'ଣ, ତା ସହିତ ଯୋଉଟା ମ୍ୟାଚ୍ ଖାଉଥିବ, ଖାପ ଖାଉଥିବ, ସେଇଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବା। So rational policy making thus requires making hard choices at many stages। So there are different stages in which generally there is description about 5 stages in which this rational policy making also proceeds or it goes on। stages ଭିତରେ ତାକୁ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି କ'ଣ ନା, to begin with the policy maker identifies the underlying problem। He formulates and sets goal priorities। Goal priorities, prioritization means which is the best goal for me, so I will keep it at the top, then the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, this way। That is known as goal priorities। Similarly, at the second stage, policymaker identifies the range of policy alternatives। What is the range? ମୋ ପାଖେ 6ଟା ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ ଅଛି କି 7ଟା ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ ଅଛି କି 10ଟା ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ ଅଛି, that is known as policy range। The third stage requires the calculations of predictions about the costs and benefits of policy alternatives। प्रति alternative ର cost benefit analysis। प्रति alternative ର cost benefit analysis, ଲାଭ କ୍ଷତିର ହିସାବ। Although simultaneously with calculating net expectations for each alternative, the policymaker is required to compare the alternatives। Finally, the policymaker selects the most efficient policy alternative। ଶେଷରେ ଯୋଉଟା ହିଁ ସବୁଠାରୁ ବେଶୀ ଫାଇଦା ଯୋଗେଇବ ସେଇଟାକୁ ହିଁ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବାକୁ ଅଛି। ସୋ ରାସନାଲ ମଡେଲ ବି ସେମିତି ଗୋଟେ ଡାଇଗ୍ରାମ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି, ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି ଆପଣମାନେ ଦେଖିବେ ଯେ ଇନପୁଟ ହେଲା, ଇନପୁଟ all resources needed for the pure rationality process। all resources, କାହିଁକି ନା ପ୍ରତିଟି ପଲିସି ଫର୍ମୁଲେସନ ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଆମକୁ ଆଗ ରିସୋର୍ସ କଥା ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ଯୋଉ ପଲିସିଟା ମୁଁ ଫ୍ରେମ୍ କରୁଛି ସେଇଟା ମୋ ପାଖରେ ଥିବା ରିସୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଦେଇକି ସମ୍ଭବ କି ନା, ମୋ ପାଖରେ ଯେତିକି ସମ୍ବଳ ଅଛି ସେଇକୁ ନେଇ, ସେଇ ସମ୍ବଳକୁ ନେଇକି ମୋର ଯୋଉ ନୀତି ନିର୍ଦ୍ଧାରଣ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ମୁଁ ଯାଉଛି ସେଇଟା ସମ୍ଭବ କି ନା। all data needed for the pure rationality process. ତାପରେ data, what are the actually the information that is available to me, କାହିଁକିନା without information I cannot arrive at a decision. So for that matter I need information. So these are the three stages. କ'ଣ ହେଲା ନା establishment of the complete set of operational goals with weights. ପ୍ରତି ଗୋଲର weight କେତେ, that has to be ascertained and decided. Second is establishment of complete inventory, complete inventory of other values and the of resources with weights. So establishment of complete inventory, that means what is the total stock of resources as well as alternatives with me. Preparation of complete set of alternative policies. The same thing which we have already discussed, and this is only depicted in a diagrammatic manner. ଡାଇଗ୍ରାମଟା ଦେଇଦେଲେ କ'ଣ ହୁଏ ନା ତାକୁ ଟିକେ ବୁଝିବା ପାଇଁ ଆଉ ଟିକେ ସହଜ ହେଇଯାଏ, ସେଇଟା ହେଉଛି ଜିନିଷ। ନହେଲେ ଆମେ ଯୋଉଟା କଥା ଆମେ ପୂର୍ବରୁ ଆଲୋଚନା କଲେ ସେ ସବୁକୁ ଏଠି ଗୋଟେ ଡାଇଗ୍ରାମ ଆକାରରେ ରିପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ କରାଯାଇଛି। ତାପରେ ସେ ତିନିଟା ଯାକ ଆସିଲା ପରେ ଆସିଲା କ'ଣ ନା ପ୍ରିପାରେସନ୍ ଅଫ୍ କମ୍ପ୍ଲିଟ୍ ସେଟ୍ ଅଫ୍ ପ୍ରେଡିକ୍ସନ୍ସ ଅଫ୍ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ସ ଆଣ୍ଡ କଷ୍ଟସ୍ ଫର୍ ଇଚ୍ ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍। କଷ୍ଟ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ବୋଲି ଯୋଉଟାକୁ କହୁଥିଲେ, ପ୍ରତି ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ ପାଇଁ କଷ୍ଟ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ କ'ଣ ବା କେତେ ସେ ଜିନିଷଟାକୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ଡିଟରମିନ୍ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। Then calculation of net expectation for each alternative. What is actually the expectation of the society? କାହିଁକି ନା ପଲିସି ଆମେ କାହା ପାଇଁ କରୁଛେ? So policy is made for some of the beneficiaries. So who are the beneficiaries and what are actually their expectations? What do they expect out of the policy, out of the policy makers? Then comparison of net expectation and identification of alternatives with highest net expectation. That means comparison among the different expectations and finally the output. That is pure rationality policy. So ultimately what comes out of the system or comes out of the institution, that is known as policy output. So there are different constraints also, ବାଧାବନ୍ଧ ବି ଥାଏ ରାସନାଲିଟି ମଡେଲରେ। କ'ଣ ନା ଆକମ୍ପ୍ଲିସିଂ ଗୋଲ୍ସ, ଗୋଲ୍ ଆଚିଭମେଣ୍ଟଟା ସବୁବେଳେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କ ଦେଇକି ସମ୍ଭବ ହୁଏ ନାହିଁ, ଏଇଟା ସ୍ୱତଃସିଦ୍ଧ କଥା। So accomplishing goals, so sometimes କ'ଣ ହୁଏ ନା more an exercise than the actual realization of a set goals. Rational policy making might turn out to be more an exercise than the actual realization of a set of goals. ଖାଲି ପରିଶ୍ରମ ସିନା, ନହେଲେ ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ ଯୋଉ ସେଟ୍ ଗୋଲ୍ ସେଟା ସବୁବେଳେ ହାସଲ କରି ହୁଏ ନାହିଁ। More an exercise than an actual realization of a set of goals. Similarly, there is securing optimization, that is also a challenge. Optimal benefit or optimal reward from a particular policy. So that is also quite important. Securing optimization. Optimization ହେଉଛି କ'ଣ ନା ମୁଁ ଯୋଉ ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ଟା ଡିସାଇଡ୍ କରିଛି ମୋତେ ସେ ଅପ୍ଟିମମ୍ ରିୱାର୍ଡ ବା ଅପ୍ଟିମମ୍ ବେନିଫିଟ୍ ଦେବ, ସର୍ବାଧିକ ଅପ୍ଟିମାଇଜେସନ୍, ସର୍ବାଧିକ ସୁବିଧା ମୋତେ ବା ସର୍ବାଧିକ ଫାଇଦା ମୋତେ ସେଥିରୁ ମିଳୁଛି କି ନା। ସୋ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ସିକ୍ୟୁରିଂ ଅପ୍ଟିମାଇଜେସନ୍, ଯୋଉଟାକି ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ ସମ୍ଭବ ହେଇପାରେ ନାହିଁ, ତେଣୁ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ଅଲସୋ ଏ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜ। Conflict between rational choice, need for action. So action and choice, rational choice, that is very difficult to match action with choice. Okay, ଯେମିତି ମୁଁ କହୁଥିଲି ଆମେ କହିଦେଉଛେ କ'ଣ ଯେ Intercaste marriage. Intercaste marriage is promoted, encouraged by the state. But at the action level, there are a lot of difficulties. A lot of difficulties because society still has not accepted it normally. ତେଣୁ ଏଠି ରହିଲା କ'ଣ ରାସନାଲ ଚଏସ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ନିଡ୍ ଫର୍ ଆକ୍ସନ୍ ବା ଚଏସ୍ ଆଉ ଆକ୍ସନ୍ ଭିତରେ ବି ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ କନଫ୍ଲିକ୍ଟ ହୁଏ। ଚଏସ୍ ତ ଗୋଟେ କଥା ମାନେ it issues as a statement, but actual action is more problematic. Similarly, dilemma of political feasibility, sometimes politically possible or not. Politically possible or not. କାହିଁକି ନା whenever ଆମେ କହୁଛେ କ'ଣ ନା politically possible କହିଲେ actually political party ମାନେ ଏଠି ପଳେଇ ଆସନ୍ତି consideration ଭିତରକୁ. So political parties they do have also their choices, their agenda, and their preferences. Some political parties they are uh, motivated in a particular way, and they are not prepared to act. ଯେମିତିକି ଆମେ କହିପାରିବା କ'ଣ ନା ଧରାଯାଉ Citizenship Amendment Act. So Citizenship Amendment Act is somewhat which is issued by the government, but there are too much of oppositions, political feasibility, but there are many political parties which are opposing it. So political feasibility, politically how far a decision ସେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ କ'ଣ ନା abrogation of Article 370 from Jammu and Kashmir. So some will support, some will oppose it. That is political feasibility. Okay. If some steps are possible to be taken, then that is good. If some steps they pose a serious challenge, then that poses the difficulty to the administration. Problem of cost benefit analysis. It is not always accurate. Sometimes cost benefit analysis also doesn't give you the clear picture of the utilization of the resources. Nature and environment of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is an important machinery of the state which is directly responsible for the realization of tasks or fulfillment of different goals in different policy matters. And here, bureaucracy as an age-old institution has its own, we can say, culture, own style of working. And that style of working has been found to be not that much encouraging as far as Indian experience is concerned. In India, bureaucracy doesn't carry a positive image, doesn't take a positive image because there are accusations like steel frame, red tapeism, all these things. So now come to another model that is Lindblom's incremental approach. Lindblom's incremental approach. So this is also Charles Lindblom presented the incremental model of the policy making process. So Lindblom wants to show that rational decision making is simply not workable for complex policy questions. Complex policy questions. So this is a comparison between that rational policy choice model and Lindblom's incremental approach model. Incremental approach model. Okay. And here fundamentals anew is time building on the past only as experience embodied in a theory and always prepared to start from the ground. Why it is known as incremental approach is that there is, yes, somebody has raised a hand. Vijayalakshmi Raut. Vijayalakshmi Raut has raised a hand. Yes. Will you please go ahead with your queries? Hello? Hello? Am I audible? Hello? Hello? Anyone please respond whether I am audible or not.
Yes, sir, you are audible. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, I'm
Actually,
Susova. Uh,
yes.
sir, I want to know what is the steel frame. I know what is the relativism, but I have no idea about what is steel frame.
Oh, a steel frame in the sense the bureaucratic machinery is very tough and it is not that open to change. It has its
Yes, sir.
own culture of operation and it impacts or it gives maximum importance to its style of working
Yes, sir.
and it is not that much flexible. It is
Okay.
not that much flexible because they have their ingrained culture within
Yes,
their
sir.
space.
Okay.
That is
Thank you, sir.
briefly the meaning. Okay, thank you. So
Thank you, sir.
I could see that Vijay Lakshmi Raut and has raised a hand. What is actually the intention or what you want to know? And there is no response. So let me go ahead. One is Madam Vijayalakshmi, and some other one was also there, and her name is missing. So let us go ahead. So why
Sir,
it
my
is
name
known?
is sir. My name is Susova.
No, no, I knew it.
Okay, sir.
Susova, I
Yes.
actually got your query, and also I think I responded
Yes, sir.
minimally.
Yeah.
Yes. So, but there is some indication on my screen. Somebody
Okay.
has
Yes,
raised
sir.
a hand. Vijay Lakshmi Raut and somebody
Hmm.
somebody else was also there, but they are not responding. Perhaps they have simply made their systems on and they have perhaps left.
Yes, sir.
Maybe.
That might be. Yes, sir.
Oh, anyway, let us move ahead. So I think, or I presume, this 2 hour session is too long and also strenuous. So that may be also another reason for this type of absenteeism. So fundamentals and is time. Yes. Why this is known as incremental approach? Because every time this approach takes the task anew. That means newly, as if we are starting the process right from the beginning. Suppose there is a 5 year tenure. Suppose we want to get a task done within a span of 5 years. After 1 year, we completed a portion of the task. Then at the second year, again we will have to start it afresh. Let us forget about what we have done in the first year. Rather, we should focus uh, what is actually the demand or what is actually the challenge within the second year and what component of the task we are able to complete within the second year and what can be the possible cost benefit analysis of this second year task. Then again we will start it afresh. ମାନେ ଯେ ଧରାଯାଉ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ଇୟରରେ ଆମେ 100 କୋଟି ଖର୍ଚ୍ଚ କରିକି କିଛି ବାଟକୁ ଆସିଛେ ତାହେଲେ ସେ 100 କୋଟିକୁ ଆମକୁ ଭୁଲି ଯିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ଆମେ ପୁଣି ଜିରୋରୁ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ ବା ୱାନ୍‌ରୁ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ଇୟର ପାଇଁ। ସେମିତି ଥାର୍ଡ ଇୟରରେ ସେମିତି ପୁଣି anew. So that is why it is known as incremental approach or incremental decision making. ତେଣୁ incremental decision making ର features କିଛି ଦିଆଯାଇଛି, ସେ features ଗୁଡ଼ାକ let me explain it. First, it proceeds through a succession of incremental changes. Incremental changes which will take place step by step manner, in a step by step manner. Incremental changes proceeds through a succession of incremental changes. Then, second, it involves mutual adjustment and negotiation. Mutual adjustment and negotiation. That means adjustment within the organization itself and also negotiation within the manpower involved within the organization. That is mutual adjustment and negotiation. Third, also, third, the incremental approach involves trial and error method. Trial and error method. Let me try. If it is successful, okay. If it is failing, then no problem. Let me revise it. So this is known as trial and error method. Let me try to accomplish the task, but if there is serious setback to the accomplishment of the task, then what further can be done? This is something which is known as the exclusive characteristics of the incremental approach or incremental model in policy making. This was Amitai Edgioni. This is the name of the author, who was a critic of both rational and incremental approaches. ଦୁଇଟା ଯାକର କ୍ରିଟିକ୍ ବା ଦୁଇଟା ଯାକକୁ ସମାଲୋଚନା କରୁଥିଲେ ଆମିତାଇ ଏଡଜିଓନି. He advanced the mixed scanning approach and so that is mixed scanning जोटा कि एडजिओनी advocate କରୁଥିଲେ, ଯାହା ଫଳରେ କ'ଣ ହେଲା ନା so Lindblom proposes the need to improve mutual partisan adjustment by greatly improved strategic policy making. So these are actually some terminologies because these different scholars, they are drawn from different fields. Somebody is political scientist, somebody is statistician, somebody is economist. So that is why their approaches are also different. And here, Lindblom, even though we knew that Edgioni was a critic both of the rational choice model and also your incremental model. But Lindblom proposes the need to improve mutual partisan adjustment by greatly improved strategic policy making. Greatly improved strategic policy making. So that is something a skill, strategic policy making. That means every policy also requires a strategic consideration through which the goal orientation and the goal achievement can be very successful. So that is, it is greatly improved strategic policy making, and that is within quotation marks. And this is in the opinion of Lindblom. So Lindblom says that the incremental approach will greatly improve strategic policy making. And he argues that there are three main forms to incremental analysis. So these are the three different forms of the incremental approach. Simple incremental analysis, strategic analysis, disjointed incrementalism. ତେଣୁ incremental approach ରେ ତିନିଟା ଯୋଉ step given by Lindblom are like this. First ହେଲା କ'ଣ ନା simple incremental analysis. It is a form of analysis in which only those alternative policies which are marginally different to the existing policy are analyzed. So, marginally different, that means, first of all, the policy makers, they will identify the alternatives. Then there will be a comparison among the alternatives. And out of that comparison, marginally different to the existing policy are analyzed. Existing policy କ'ଣ ଥିଲା ଏବଂ ନ୍ୟୁ policy କୋଉ ଡିରେକ୍ସନରେ ଯାଉଛି, ତେଣୁ ସେଟାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ମାର୍ଜିନାଲି ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ଟୁ ଦ ଏକ୍ଜିଷ୍ଟିଂ ପଲିସି। ଯାହା ଆଗରୁ ଏକ୍ଜିଷ୍ଟିଂ ପଲିସି ଥିଲା, ନୂଆ ପଲିସି କୋଉ ଡିରେକ୍ସନରେ ଯାଉଛି, ତେଣୁ ସେଟା ହେଲା ମାର୍ଜିନାଲି ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ। ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ନିଡ୍ସ ଟୁ ବି ଆଇଡେଣ୍ଟିଫାଏଡ୍। ସେଥିରେ ସେଇ ଆପ୍ରୋଚଟା ଫଲୋ କରାଯାଏ ବୋଲି ତାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ଇନକ୍ରିମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ। ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ଷ୍ଟେପ୍ ଇନ୍ ଦ ଇନକ୍ରିମେଣ୍ଟାଲ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ ହେଉଛି କ'ଣ ନା ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍। ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ କହିଲେ ପ୍ରତି ପଲିସିର ଗୋଟେ ୟୁନିକନେସ୍ ଅଛି। ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପଲିସି ପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ ଦରକାର, डिफेन्स पॉलिसी ପାଇଁ ସେ ପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ପଲିସି ଦରକାର, ଏଡୁକେସନ ପଲିସି ପାଇଁ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଅଲଗା ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ପଲିସି ଦରକାର। ସୋ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ କ'ଣ ନା ଲିଣ୍ଡବ୍ଲମ୍ ଆର୍ଗୁes that since completeness of analysis is not possible because of many constraints, an analyst should take a middle position, informed, thoughtful, and uh, uses methods to make better choices. So these methods include trial and error learning, systems analysis, operations research, management by objectives, program evaluation, review technique. So these are some managerial jargons, management jargons. Okay, management jargons, and also some borrowed from other branches of social sciences. And this is what we can say, this depends on the applicability of the policy maker, one who is responsible for policy making and implementation. They will try to apply these techniques depending on their policy alternatives. That is strategic analysis. ତେଣୁ ଯେମିତି ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚର ପାଇଁ ଗୋଟାଏ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ସେଇଟା କେବେ ଆପ୍ଲିକେବୁଲ ହେଇପାରିବ ନାହିଁ ଡିଫେନ୍ସ ପାଇଁ, ଡିଫେନ୍ସର ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ କେବେ ଆପ୍ଲିକେବୁଲ ହେଇପାରିବ ନାହିଁ ଏଡୁକେସନ ପାଇଁ। So every policy has its own strategic uniqueness. So strategic analysis is also very important as far as Lindblom's incremental approach is concerned. Then disjointed incrementalism. Disjointed means discontinued. So disjointed is an analytical strategy which involves simplifying and focusing on problems. So simplify and focus on the problems. And there are methods also. What is the method? The limitation of analysis for a few familiar alternatives. So these are the, we can say, something which is very uh, particular or very, we can say, unique to the policymaker involved in any particular respect. Intertwining values and policy goals with empirical analysis of problems. It may appear to be ଯୋଉଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଦିଆଯାଇଛି ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକ ହୁଏତ ବୁଝିବା ପାଇଁ ଟିକେ ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟ ଲାଗୁଥିବ, ଆଇ ଏଗ୍ରି ୱିଥ୍ ୟୁ, ବଟ୍ ଦିଜ୍ ଆର୍ ସିମ୍ପଲି ଟର୍ମିନୋଲୋଜିଜ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଅଲସୋ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ, we can say, uh, different approaches in the models. ଆଉ ସେଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଡିଭିଏଟ୍ କରିପାରିବା ନାହିଁ ବା ସେଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରିପାରିବା ନାହିଁ। ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ସେମିତି କିଛି ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟ ନୁହେଁ। ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକୁ ଜଷ୍ଟ ଖାଲି କ'ଣ ନା ଲିମିଟେସନ୍ ଅଫ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ଫର୍ ଏ ଫ୍ୟୁ ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିଆର ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ସ। ଲିମିଟେସନ୍ସ ଅଫ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ କେତେଟା ପାଇଁ ଆନାଲାଇଜ୍ କରିବାଟା ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ ସରି ସହଜ ହେଇନଥାଏ। ତେଣୁ ସେଟାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ଲିମିଟେସନ୍ସ ଅଫ୍ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍। କାହିଁକିନା ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷ ଆମେ ଆନାଲାଇଜ୍ କଲେ ତ ଯାଇକି ତାର ସମସ୍ୟା ବା ତାର ସମାଧାନ କରିପାରିବା। ତେଣୁ ଗୋଟେ ସମସ୍ୟାକୁ ତାକୁ ଆଲୋଚନା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟାଲୋଚନା ନ କଲେ ତାର ସମାଧାନ ବାହାରିବ କେମିତି? ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ ଫର୍ ଏ ଫ୍ୟୁ ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିଆର ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ସ। ତେଣୁ ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ୍ ଭିତରୁ କିଛିଟା ଆମ ପାଇଁ ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିଆର, କିଛିଟା ଅନଫ୍ୟାମିଲିଆର। ମାନେ ଯୋଉଟା ଫ୍ୟାମିଲିଆର ଆମେ ତା ସହିତ ଅଭ୍ୟସ୍ତ ଅଛେ ଆଗରୁ, ଅନଫ୍ୟାମିଲିଆର ଯୋଉଟା ଆମ ପାଇଁ ସମ୍ପୂର୍ଣ୍ଣ ରୂପେ ନୂଆ। ତେଣୁ ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି ଆନାଲିସିସ୍ଟା ନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଭାବରେ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ହେବ। ଇଣ୍ଟରଟ୍ୱାଇନିଂ ମିଶେଇଦେବା। Intertwining values and policy goals. So what are the values we are aiming at achieving and what are also the policy goals? କାହିଁକିନା ପ୍ରତି policy goalର ଗୋଟାଏ value consideration ଅଛି ବା value orientation ବି ଅଛି। ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ କ'ଣ ଆମର ଦରକାର ଏଗ୍ରିକଲଚରାଲ ପ୍ରଡକ୍ସନକୁ ବଢ଼େଇବା, କିନ୍ତୁ ବଢ଼େଇବାର ମାନେ ନୁହେଁ ଯେ ସ୍ପୁରିୟସ୍ ମ୍ୟାଟେରିଆଲ୍ସ ୟୁଜ୍ କରିକି ବା ଯେଉଁଟାକୁ ଆର୍ଟିଫିସିଆଲ ଆମର ଆର୍ଟିଫିସିଆଲ ମ୍ୟାନ୍ୟୁଅର୍ସ, ଫର୍ଟିଲାଇଜର୍ସ, ପେଷ୍ଟିସାଇଡ୍ସ ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଏତେ ମାତ୍ରାରେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ହେଲାଣି ଯେ ସଏଲର ପ୍ରଡକ୍ଟିଭିଟି ବି ଡ୍ୟାମେଜ୍ ହେଇଗଲାଣି ବା ଅନ୍ୟ ଆନ୍ସିଲାରୀ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ୍ସ ବା ଯେଉଁଗୁଡ଼ା କନଜ୍ୟୁମର ମାନଙ୍କର ହେଲ୍ଥ ଇସ୍ୟୁଜ୍ ବି ବାହାରୁଛି। ତେଣୁ ସେଗୁଡ଼ାକ ହେଲା କ'ଣ ନା ଇଣ୍ଟରଟ୍ୱାଇନିଂ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁଜ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ପଲିସି ଗୋଲ୍ସ। ଦୁଇଟା ଯାକକୁ ଆମକୁ ମିଶେଇବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ, ଆଡ଼ଜଷ୍ଟ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ, କମ୍ପେୟାର କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ତାହେଲେ ଯାଇକି ଆମର ପଲିସି ମେକିଂଟା ସାଉଣ୍ଡ ହେଇପାରିବ, ନହେଲେ ହେଇପାରିବ ନାହିଁ। Focusing on ills to be remedied rather than on goals to be sought. So, ills to be remedied ଯାହା କିଛି ଅଛି ଅବ୍ୟବସ୍ଥା ତାକୁ କେମିତି ସୁଧାରି ହେବ। Focusing on ills to be remedied. So how to remedy the ills rather than on goals. Don't focus on goals. Rather try to improve upon your difficulties, improve upon your shortcomings. Then trial and error learning. That is all trial and error. Let me go ahead with what is at hand or what is my problem instead of we can say uh, completely sacrificing or completely leaving the option closed. So trial and error learning. Let me try to learn something by directly being involved in the policy process. କାହିଁକି ନା ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ ପଲିସିର ସବୁ ଆସ୍ପେକ୍ଟଟା ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଜଣା ନଥାଏ। ତେଣୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କୁ ଜଣା ନଥାଏ ସେଇଟାକୁ କ'ଣ କରାଯିବ, ସେଇଟାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ ଟ୍ରାଏଲ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଏରର ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣିଂ। ପଲିସି ମେକିଂରେ ବା ପଲିସି ଇମ୍ପ୍ଲିମେଣ୍ଟେସନରେ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଥାଆନ୍ତି ସେଟାକୁ କୁହାଯାଇ ପାରିବନି ଯେ ସମସ୍ତେ ସବୁ କିଛି ଜାଣିଥାନ୍ତି ବୋଲି। ତେଣୁ ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି ସେଠି କ'ଣ ହୁଏ ନା ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ କେଉଁଟା ମୋ ପାଇଁ ଅଜଣା। So just 1 or 2 minutes, just allow me this break. So, so let us resume. So here trial and error learning, then analyzing a limited number of options and their consequences. Analyzing a limited number of options. So, what is actually the limited number of options and their consequences? ଏଇଟାକୁ ଆମେ ଅନ୍ୟ ଆପ୍ରୋଚରେ ବି ପଢ଼ିଛେ ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ପଲିସି ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ। ପଲିସି ଅଲ୍ଟରନେଟିଭ 1 ର କନସିକ୍ୱେନ୍ସ କ'ଣ, 2 ର କନସିକ୍ୱେନ୍ସ କ'ଣ। ତେଣୁ ଏଗୁଡ଼ା କ'ଣ କି ପ୍ରତି ମଡେଲ, every model is slightly different from the other. Essentially, their approaches are the same, almost the same. The spirit of the approach is same. The we can say the paths may be different, but ultimately, what is the goal of a policy? To achieve something, to achieve something for the betterment of the society, betterment of the people. That is policy. Public policy means policy meant for the public, meant for the welfare of the public or the people. So every model is focusing on this. Every model is focusing on how the public is going to benefit from a particular policy making approach. So now there is another model which is known as Draw's normative optimum model. Draw's normative optimum model. So what is that? Now Drawer finds Lindblom's incrementalist model of decision making quite conservative and unsatisfactory. So, Drawer finds the incrementalist model of decision making to be quite conservative and unsatisfactory. That means he is not satisfied with the incremental model or incrementalist model of Lindblom. That is quite obvious. You see, ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହେ doctors differ, ସେମିତି social scientists also differ. And one scientist's approach may not be appealing to the others. So obviously those who are not impressed by a particular model or particular approach, they will start criticizing it or they may reject it. That is quite natural. But anyway, so Broad's normative optimum model, what is actually the speciality of this? Now these are the uh, specialities involved with Draw's normative optimum model. So here, need for rationality. There is need for rationality. So Draw's normative optimum model first requirement is there is need for rationality. Rationality means capability to distinguish between right and wrong, just and unjust, good and bad. So this is rationality. Ability to distinguish between different policy alternatives. Second is need for introduction of management techniques. Techniques are also there. These management techniques, they are taught in detail in different business management schools. And very little we know from public administration. Very little. But there are reputed management institutes like the Indian Institutes of Management, and also there are many reputed private institutions of management also which are very professional, very adept in developing different management techniques. And those management techniques, they are also born out of concrete life experiences, business experiences. They have tested it, verified it, and they have come out with encouraging results. That is why they have been implemented in different scales, including the public sector. Public sector approaches nowadays, because in the 21st century, public sector jobs or public sector enterprises, they are also fast catching up with the recent trends of efficiency, productivity, and also how they can be reliable in the public domain. So, need for introduction of management techniques for enhancing rationality of decision making. How decision making can be more rational, and for that, management techniques are responsible. Management techniques can do that job. Then comes policy science approach, which is Laswell's term for dealing with complex problems requiring decisions at the higher levels. Policy science approach. Okay, so how it can also be considered as a science. You know, those actually who are real scientists, they do not like the term science to be used by social scientists. It's a fact. But we actually amuse in using this term. We social scientists or social science students amuse in using this term science very frequently. Okay, so policy science approach, that is also because it was advocated by Laswell. Laswell treated it as policy science, and he had his justifications also for dealing with complex problems requiring decisions at the higher levels. Decisions at the higher levels. We know it's a general practice in many organizations where decision making is done at the top level. Decision making, decision making in almost all types of organizations is done at the topmost level. So that is why at higher levels, then need to take account of values and irrational elements in decision making. Take account of values ଯାହା ବିଷୟରେ ଆମେ ଆଗରୁ discuss କରିଛେ. So every society by every state has its own typical nature of values, value considerations, value preferences, value biases, and irrational elements in decision making. Irrational elements in decision making. Sometimes human beings also are irrational. ଯିଏ rational ସିଏ ବି irrational ହେଇପାରିବ. ତାର ମାନେ ନୁହେଁ ଯେ ଜଣେ ଯିଏ rational ଗୋଟାଏ କେସ୍ରେ ସେ ସବୁବେଳେ rational ରହିପାରିବ ବୋଲି ତାର ଗ୍ୟାରେଣ୍ଟି କିଛି ନାହିଁ. ଯିଏ ଏବେ rational ଅଛି ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ସମୟରେ ବା ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟରେ ନିୟୋଜିତ ହେଲା ବେଳକୁ may also turn out to be irrational. ତେଣୁ irrational elements in decision making need to take out. So what are actually the irrational elements in decision making? So when you will be able to identify what are the irrational elements in decision making, then automatically decision making can be improved significantly. So Drawer calls it normative optimalism. Normative optimalism. So by following these steps, the steps about which we discussed just now, Broad believes we can attain normative optimalism. Normative. Normative means something which is associated with norms. Norms of the society. Norms of the society. What are norms of the society? So, for example, in our society, paying respect to the elders. is a normative consideration or it's a norm within the society. So that is normative optimalism. So while we are going for making some policy, we have to focus on, according to drawer, on normative optimalism. ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ବା ନର୍ମେଟିଭିଟି ଦୃଷ୍ଟିରୁ ଏଇଟା କେମିତି ଅପ୍ଟିମାଲ ହୋଇପାରିବ, ତେଣୁ ତାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ ଅପ୍ଟିମାଲିଜମ୍। ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ ଯୋଉଟା ଅପ୍ଟିମାଲ ହେଇପାରିବ ତାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ ଅପ୍ଟିମାଲିଜମ୍। ଅପ୍ଟିମମ୍ କହିଲେ ହାଇଏଷ୍ଟ ଲେଭେଲ ବା ମ୍ୟାକ୍ସିମମ୍ ଲେଭେଲ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ। ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ କେମିତି ରହିପାରିବ, ମୂଲ୍ୟବୋଧ ସୂଚକ ହେଇକି ରହିପାରିବ। ମୂଲ୍ୟବୋଧ ଠାରୁ ଦୂରେଇ ଗଲେ ସେ ପଲିସିର କାର୍ଯ୍ୟକାରିତା ବହୁତ କମିଯାଏ, ଏଫେକ୍ଟିଭନେସଟା ବହୁତ କମିଯାଏ। ତେଣୁ ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ ଅପ୍ଟିମାଲିଜମ୍ ସେଟା ନିହାତି ଦରକାର। ନର୍ମେଟିଭ୍ ଅପ୍ଟିମାଲିଜମ୍ ଥିଲେ ସେ ପଲିସିଟା ଗ୍ରହଣୀୟ ହେଇପାରିବ ବା ଲୋକ ତାକୁ ସମ୍ମାନ ଦେଖେଇବେ ଏବଂ ସହଜରେ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବେ। So, which combines core elements of the rational model, such as the measurement of costs and benefits, with extra rational factors that are excluded from the pure rationality model. So, these are some of the explanations by Drawer on his model. Drawer puts forward a more complex model of about 18 stages, which include the following main stages. 18ଟା ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ ଡେସ୍କ୍ରାଇବ୍ କରିଥିବା ଗୋଟାଏ ମଡେଲ ଡ୍ରର, ସେ 18ଟା ଷ୍ଟେଜ ହେଉଛି ଏଇଗୁଡ଼ାକ। କ'ଣ ନା ମେଟା ପଲିସି ମେକିଂ ଷ୍ଟେଜ ଇନକ୍ଲୁଡ୍ସ ପ୍ରୋସେସିଂ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁଜ। ଇଏ ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ ଷ୍ଟେଜ। ମେଟା ପଲିସି ମେକିଂ, ମେଟା ମିନ୍ସ ଯୋଉଟା ଆମେ ଯେମିତି କହୁଛେ କ'ଣ ମେଟା ଆନାଲିସିସ୍, ମାନେ ଗୁଡ଼େ କିଛି ଇଏକୁ ଇନକ୍ଲୁଡ କରିକି ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ଆଙ୍ଗଲ୍ସ, ଫ୍ରମ୍ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ଆଙ୍ଗଲ୍ସ, ଯେମିତି ମେଟା ନ୍ୟାରେଟିଭ୍ ବୋଲି ଆମେ କହେ। ସୋ ନ୍ୟାରେଟିଭ୍ which is very explicitly explanatory, very explicitly explanatory. It will be containing explanations in a very broad-based manner. So meta policy making stage includes processing values. ये है stage 1. Processing reality, ये है stage 2. Reality, processing reality. Reality हमें बुझुचे and how that can be processed also. Third stage आसला processing problems. Processing problems. Then surveying. Then processing. Then developing resources. Designing. Evaluation. Redesigning the policy making system. Allocating problems. Values and resources. And determining policy making strategy. ଏଗୁଡ଼ା ଖାଲି ମାନେ କ'ଣ କି ଗୋଟେ ମେଥଡ଼ ସହିତ ବା ଗୋଟେ ମଡେଲ ସହିତ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ମଡେଲ କେମିତି ଟିକେ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ହବ, ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଦେ ହାଭ୍ ୟୁଜ୍ ଦିସ୍ ଟର୍ମିନୋଲୋଜିଜ୍। ଆଉ କ'ଣ କି ଯେମିତି ଆମେ ଜାଣୁଛେ କ'ଣ, ଯେମିତି ଡକ୍ଟର୍ସ ଡିଫର ସେମିତି ସୋଶାଲ ସାଇଣ୍ଟିଷ୍ଟ ବି ଡିଫର। ତେଣୁ ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି ନିଜର ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ବଢ଼େଇବା ପାଇଁ ବା ନିଜ ମଡେଲର ଗୁରୁତ୍ୱ ବଢ଼େଇବା ପାଇଁ ଦେ ହାଭ୍ ୟୁଜ୍ ଦିସ୍ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ଷ୍ଟେଜେସ୍, ଅଫ୍ କୋର୍ସ ନଟ୍ ୱିଦାଉଟ୍ ଭ୍ୟାଲିଡିଟି। ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ମାଇନ୍ୟୁଟଲି ଏକ୍ଜାମିନ୍ କରିବା, ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା ଯେ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଏଇ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ ନିହାତି ବେସଲେସ୍ ନୁହେଁ। ତେଣୁ ମେଟା ପଲିସି ମେକିଂ ଷ୍ଟେଜ ଇନକ୍ଲୁଡ୍ସ ପ୍ରୋସେସିଂ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁଜ। ସେଠି ପ୍ରୋସେସିଂ ଅଫ୍ ଭ୍ୟାଲ୍ୟୁଜରୁ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ ହେଲା। ତାପରେ ପ୍ରୋସେସିଂ ରିଆଲିଟି, ବାସ୍ତବତା ଦୃଷ୍ଟିକୋଣରୁ ଗୋଟେ ଜିନିଷକୁ ତାପରେ ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା, ପ୍ରୋସେସିଂ ରିଆଲିଟି। ତାପରେ ପ୍ରୋସେସିଂ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ୍ସ, କ'ଣ କ'ଣ ସମସ୍ୟା ଆସିପାରେ, ନର୍ମାଲ ଥିଙ୍ଗ। ତେଣୁ କିଏ ତାକୁ ହାଇରାର୍କିକାଲି କୋଉଠି ଫିଟ୍ କରୁଛି, କୋଉ ଷ୍ଟେଜରେ କାହାକୁ କିଏ ଫିଟ୍ କରୁଛି, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଡିପେଣ୍ଡସ୍ ଅନ୍ ଦି ଅଥର ଅର୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଡିପେଣ୍ଡସ୍ ଅନ୍ ଦ ରାଇଟର। ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଅଟୋମେଟିକାଲି କ'ଣ ହେଉଛି ନା ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ସବୁ ପରସ୍ପର ଠାରୁ ଅଲଗା ଆସୁଛି। So please don't burden your mind by simply seeing these jargons or seeing these descriptions. এই ওয়ার্ড গুড়াକ এই ଷ୍ଟେଜ୍ ଗୁଡ଼ାକ এইଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଦେଖିଦେଇକି କିଛି ନିହାତି ପ୍ୟାନିକ୍ଡ ହବାର ନାହିଁ। ଏକ୍ଜାମ୍ ଆସିଲେ ସବୁ ଠିକ୍ ହେଇଯିବ। ତେଣୁ କମ୍ଫର୍ଟେବଲି ଆପଣ ପଢ଼ନ୍ତୁ, କମ୍ଫର୍ଟେବଲି ପଢ଼ନ୍ତୁ, କିଛି ଅସୁବିଧା ହେବାର ନାହିଁ। ଇଗ୍ନୋ ମ୍ୟାଟେରିଆଲ୍ସ ଆର୍ ଭେରି ୱେଲ୍ ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚଡ। ଖାଲି ଏଇଆ ଟିକେ ଯେହେତୁ ଏକ୍ଜଷ୍ଟିଭ୍ ଅଛି, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଟିକେ ହୁଏତ ଲାଗିପାରେ। ସବୁ ଏକ୍ଜାମ୍ ତ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜ, ତେଣୁ ସେଟାରେ କିଛି ଡିସ୍କରେଜ୍ଡ ହେବାର ନାହିଁ। ବୁଝିପାରିଲେ କି? ତେଣୁ କଥା ହେଉଛି ଆମକୁ ବକ୍ ବକ୍ ହେବାଟା ସହଜ, କିନ୍ତୁ ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଦୋଜ୍ ହୁ ଆର୍ ଟେକିଂ ଦ ଏକ୍ଜାମ୍ସ, ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ରିଏଲି ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟ ଫର୍ ଦେମ୍। ତେଣୁ ୱାନ୍ ହୁ ଇଜ୍ ଟେକିଂ ଦ ଏକ୍ଜାମ୍ ଇଜ୍ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ଫେସିଂ ଦ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜ। ସୋ ତାପରେ ପୁଣି ଆସୁଛି ଗୋଟେ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପବ୍ଲିକ୍ ପଲିସି ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍। ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପବ୍ଲିକ୍ ପଲିସି ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍, ଯେହେତୁ ଏଇଟାକୁ ମୁଁ ଟିକେ କନସିଡର କଲି ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟଟା ବୋଲି ପ୍ରତି ମଡେଲଟା, ସେଥିପାଇଁ ଏଇ ଫୁଲ୍ ୟୁନିଟ୍ଟା ପଳେଇଗଲା ଆଜିର ସେସନରେ। ଆଉ ଏନିୱେ, କାହିଁକିନା ଏମିତି ହାପାଜାର୍ଡ ମ୍ୟାନରରେ, ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ୍ ମାଇ ଓପିନିଅନ୍, ଆଇ ଏମ୍ ଜଷ୍ଟ putting this before you. How far you will appreciate it, I do not know. But thing is that whenever we are taking up any unit, let us try to understand it little bit in detail. If one unit is understood, then it can lead the way to the others. ଆଉ ଯଦି ୟୁନିଟ୍ 1ରୁ କିଛି, ୟୁନିଟ୍ 2ରୁ କିଛି, ୟୁନିଟ୍ 3ରୁ କିଛି, ସିଏ ବି ଗୋଟେ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍, ହୁଏତ ସିଏ ବି କାହାକୁ ଭଲ ଲାଗିପାରେ, କାହାକୁ ନ ଲାଗି ବି ପାରେ। ଏ ହେଉଛି ଜିନିଷ। ବଟ୍ ଏନିୱେ, so have patience and let us now focus on political public policy approach. Political public policy approach. So political policy process approach or political public policy approach espoused in policy making. Uh, this is Lawrence Lynn and Peter DeLeon. Lawrence Lynn and Peter DeLeon, they have advocated this approach. In this approach, public policy making is viewed as a political process. Policy making is viewed as a political process instead of a technical process. So, public policy making is a political process instead of a technical process. Okay. Kahinki political process? Now, because this is something done in state capacity, by the state, by the institutions of the state or organs of the state. So obviously, an activity behind which there is the direct or indirect hand of the state, obviously it can be political. ତେଣୁ ଏଠି ଗୋଟେ ଟେକ୍ନିକାଲ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍ ନ ନେଇକରି ବରଂ ଲରେନ୍ସ ଲିନ୍ ଆଉ ପିଟର ଡିଲିୟନ ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଯେ ପବ୍ଲିକ ପଲିସି ହେଉଛି ଗୋଟେ କ'ଣ ନା ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପ୍ରୋସେସ୍। ଏଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ଟେକ୍ନିକାଲ ପ୍ରୋସେସ୍ ନୁହେଁ, ବରଂ ଗୋଟେ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ପ୍ରୋସେସ୍। So the approach emphasizes the political interaction from which policy derives. Lin sees public policy as the output of government. এটা বুঝিবার কিছু নাই। Public policy as the output of the government. Governmentର ଗୋଟାଏ output ବା ପ୍ରବର୍ତ୍ତନ। So Lin argues that policy making encompasses not only goal setting, decision making, and formulation of political strategies, but also supervision of policy planning. Supervision is also there, resource allocation is also there, operations management is there, how to manage the operations management. Program evaluation is also there, and efforts at communication, argument, and persuasion. Okay, so according to Lin, policy making encompasses not only goal setting will be there, but in addition to it, others are also there. What are the others? Now, goal setting, decision making ଆଉ formulation of political strategies ये तो निश्चय कॉमन ହେଲା कॉमन किए ना गोल सेटिंग डिसीजन मेकिंग फॉर्मुलेशन ऑफ पॉलिटिकल स्ट्राटेजीज ତା ସହିତ ବଟ୍ ଅଲସୋ ଆହୁରି କ'ଣ ତା ଭିତରେ ରହୁଛି ନା ସୁପରଭିଜନ ସୁପରଭାଇଜର ହୁ ଇଜ୍ ଏ ସୁପରଭାଇଜର one who is senior in an organization senior position functionary in an organization is known as the supervisor. So supervision of policy planning, somebody to supervise the policy planning. Resource allocation, how resources will be allocated, say human resources ହେଇଥାଉ material resources ହେଇଥାଉ, how resources can be allocated, that is also part of public policy. ଆହୁରି କ'ଣ ନା operations management, the entire operation needs to be managed well, needs to be managed well. Then comes program evaluation. So whatever programs I have undertaken or the policymakers have undertaken, they are to be evaluated, examined, and efforts at communication. There should be proper communication also. Everybody should be in the know. Everybody should be aware, and that awareness can be possible only through a sound system of communication prevailing within the organization. Then comes argument and also persuasion. Whenever somebody differs, let him or her argue, and after that argument, let me try to, or those who are actually policymakers, let them try to persuade, ପ୍ରବର୍ତ୍ତେଇବା। ଯଦି ଆର୍ଗୁମେଣ୍ଟ ହେବ ଆର୍ଗୁମେଣ୍ଟରୁ ତାପରେ କ'ଣ ହେବ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରିବା ତାକୁ କେମିତି ପୁଣି ପ୍ରବର୍ତ୍ତେଇକି ପଲିସି ବାଟରେ ନେବା। persuasion. So public policy, effective managers of public policy, they follow these approaches according to Lin. କ'ଣ ନା establish understandable premises for their organization's objectives. So what are the objectives of the organization? They have to be very well designed, communicated. Number 2, attain an intellectual grasp of strategically important issues. Intellectual grasp ମାନେ ଯିଏ ପଲିସି ମେକର ସିଏ ତାର ବୁଦ୍ଧିମତା ଭିତରେ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ ଜିନିଷଟାକୁ ବୁଝିବାକୁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରିବ, ତାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ ଇଣ୍ଟେଲେକ୍ଚୁଆଲ ଗ୍ରାସ୍ପ। ଆମେ ଯେଉଁ ଜିନିଷଟା ଆମେ ବୁଝି ଯାଉଛେ ସେଟା ଆମ ଇଣ୍ଟେଲେକ୍ଚୁଆଲ ଗ୍ରାସ୍ପ ଭିତରକୁ ଆସୁଛି। ସେମିତି ପଲିସି ମେକର ମଧ୍ୟ ଏଣ୍ଟାୟାର ଜିନିଷଟାକୁ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ ବୁଝିବାର ଅଛି। And identify and focus attention on those activities that give meaning to the organization's employees. ତେଣୁ ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜେସନର ଏମ୍ପ୍ଲୟିଜ୍ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଯିଏ ପ୍ରକୃତରେ ଠିକ୍ ବାଟରେ ନେଇପାରିବ ସେଇଭଳି ଫୋକସ୍ ଅନ୍ ଆଟେନ୍ସନ୍ those activities that give meaning to the organization's employees. So this is question of, we can say, relevance. Remain alert to and exploit all opportunities. ସବୁବେଳେ ଆଲର୍ଟ ରହିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ ଏବଂ ସବୁ ଅପରଚ୍ୟୁନିଟିକୁ ଏକ୍ସପ୍ଲଏଟ୍ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। Consciously employ the strong features of their personalities. କାହାର କୋଉଟା ଷ୍ଟ୍ରଙ୍ଗ ପର୍ସନାଲିଟି ସେଇଟାକୁ ଦେଖିକି ୟୁଟିଲାଇଜ୍ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ସମସ୍ତେ ସବୁ ଦିଗରେ ଏଫିସିଏଣ୍ଟ ନୁହନ୍ତି। କିଏ ମ୍ୟାଥମେଟିକ୍ସରେ ଏଫିସିଏଣ୍ଟ କାଲକୁଲେସନ୍ ବାବଦରେ ତ, କିଏ ଅନ୍ୟ କୌଣସି କାମରେ ଏକ୍ସପର୍ଟ, କିଏ ପଇସା ପତ୍ର ଯୋଗାଡ଼ କରିବାର ଏକ୍ସପର୍ଟ ତ, କିଏ ଅନ୍ୟ କୌଣସି। So that has to be properly understood by the bosses within the policy process, within the institution. Then manage within the framework of an economy of personal resources to govern how much they attempt to accomplish and how they go about it. How much one wants to accomplish. ମୋର ପଲିସି ହିସାବରେ ଗୋଲ ହିସାବରେ କେତେ ଜିନିଷ ମୁଁ ହାସଲ କରିପାରିବି ସେଇଟାକୁ ମୋତେ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ ବୁଝିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ତାପରେ ହାଉ ଦେ ଗୋ ଏବାଉଟ୍ ଇଟ୍ ଏବଂ ସେଇଟାକୁ ହାସଲ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ମୋତେ କେଉଁ ବାଟରେ ଯିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ହାଉ ଦେ ଗୋ ଏବାଉଟ୍ ଇଟ୍। ଲାଷ୍ଟ ହେଉଛି ମିକ୍ସଡ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍ ବାଇ ହଗୁଡ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଗନ୍। ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍ ହେଲା ବାଇ ହଗୁଡ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଗନ୍, ତାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ମିକ୍ସଡ ଆପ୍ରୋଚ୍। ଏଇଟା ହେଉଛି ଲାଷ୍ଟ ମଡେଲ। ସେଟା ହେଲା କ'ଣ ନା ତାର ଷ୍ଟେପ୍ ବାଇ ଷ୍ଟେପ୍ ପ୍ରୋସେସ୍ ହେଲା କ'ଣ ନା ଡିସାଇଡିଂ ଟୁ ଡିସାଇଡ୍। ପ୍ରଥମେ ଆମେ ନିଷ୍ପତ୍ତି ନେବା ପାଇଁ ନିଷ୍ପତ୍ତିଟେ ଗ୍ରହଣ କରିବାକୁ ପଡ଼ିବ। ଡିସାଇଡିଂ ହାଉ ଟୁ ଡିସାଇଡ୍, କେମିତି ସେଭଳି ନିଷ୍ପତ୍ତି ନେଲେ that also has to be known very well to us. Then issue definition. So what are the issues and how the policy makers are going to define those issues. Then forecasting, doing something in keeping the future in view. Sorry, forecasting. To forecast means to predict something. This can be possible. So if this policy is adopted, this much can be achieved. This is forecast. It may be true or not, but something needs to be forecasted. Then setting objectives and priorities. Agrubi also we have discussed about it. Setting priorities, objectives and priorities. Policy ର objective କ'ଣ, ତା ଭିତରେ priorities କ'ଣ, ଏକ ନମ୍ବର କ'ଣ, ଦୁଇ ନମ୍ବର କ'ଣ, ତିନି ନମ୍ବର କ'ଣ, priorities that is known as prioritization. Most important ଟା ସବୁବେଳେ top ରେ ରହିବ, ତା ତଳକୁ next, ତା ତଳକୁ next. So then options analysis বা ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ଆମେ କହୁଛେ alternatives, evaluating the alternatives বা options analysis. What are my options available to me? So let me analyze. Then policy implementation, monitoring and control. Policy implementation, monitoring and control. Implement it, monitor it and control it. Then evaluation, how far we have been successful. Evaluation, whether policy has achieved the target or it has been short of the target. Then policy implementation, succession, termination. Policy needs to be implemented, then there is succession, the next step, and termination. If it is successful, then okay. If it is unsuccessful, terminate it, cut it, and start a new approach. So this is something which is known as your mixed approach by Hogwood and Gone. So now this is time. Thank you, Sushobha and Sasodhar, for your patience, for
Thank you,
remaining
sir.
or remaining logged in throughout these 2 hours. So I must thank you for your patience. That's it for today. Then we shall meet tomorrow with something different. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Sir, what will be discussed tomorrow? Which chapter? I know,
Uh,
sir.
I, I think we should take up 3, 4, 5, sixth. Let us start with sixth one.
Okay, sir.
Otherwise, if it is possible, then please tell me in advance which one you need to be uh, taught.
No, sir, it's okay. Sixth chapter, it's okay.
Okay, so
Okay, sir.
uh, now let me. You must be knowing, of course, my name. So towards the last part, let me make myself visible on the screen.
Okay,
So
sir.
the so uh, thank you for your patience. Now let us wind up. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, both of you. Thanks also to the RC office Bhubaneswar.